came to him, talked to him about it, decided to put it out on open source. And then the snowball really started to gather some momentum. So when we met, one of the things that we first talked about really was, Tony, you've got this great momentum going out in this emerging community. How can we really take this to the next level? And so we started to talk about open governance and what options he might be able to pursue to get there. The project was acquired by SmartBear early last year, and Tony started working there. And we continued to help as the team started to look at different options. And this was a team both at SmartBear, but at IBM, Apogee, others in the industry, others in the developer community. They were all interested in seeing this evolve in a positive direction. The Linux Foundation became the popular choice, and it was announced as a new working group project at the November timeframe, end of last year. So what is the overall mission? The goal of the Open API initiative is to provide a place for a technical community to gather and work on a vendor-neutral, portable, and open source specification to advance this project in a way that serves both the developer community, the industry at large, and ultimately the end users of APIs. And you can see a lot of companies, large and small, involved with the group. We've got off to a great start. The specification is the founding element of this project, and it's now basically a way in which you both document and structure the API so that it provides that continuity and a framework that ultimately makes this process a lot less onerous. It's independent of any language or framework. It supports both YAML and JSON formats. And we really see this starting to broaden and take off as we start to work collectively. And you can see by the graph, Stack Overflow, far and away it's the most popular approach to solve this problem. And also, you can see that it's not just companies and small, large coming together to work on this. It's also end user entities getting behind this initiative in a major, major way. The governance structure has 3 key elements, and the technical developer community has just been formed around this, but we just announced the transition from version 2.0 to 3.0. So there's never really been a better time to get involved with this project. I know you've heard that from the other projects this morning, but if you're looking at the API space, or if this is a problem that you have to address, now would be a great time to get engaged with this. So I hope you will take an opportunity to learn more about the Open API initiative, the companies behind it, what we're trying to accomplish, and really, really how only open source can make something like this possible. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jim.
All right, from web development to APIs and now to big data. No technology presentation would be complete without big data. I'd like to invite up Roman from our ODPI initiative. This is an interesting project where you have an example of how code flows in open source from upstream components in Hadoop that are at the Apache Software Foundation into ODPI, which is sort of midstream integrated, then flow down into commercial projects. And it's something that, again, as we educate different developer communities and industry on how that works, I think ODPI is doing some interesting things in enabling that code to flow more smoothly. So let me turn it over to Roman.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. I'm actually super excited to be here today. Well, first of all, I've been at Linux Foundation Summits, for as long as I think they existed. This is the first time for me to be on stage, so that one is off of the bucket list. And second of all, ODPI has just had its first release. So instead of just listening to me how awesome it is, you can actually, at the end of this presentation, just grab the bit, start playing with it. So it's actually a very nicely put together effort, but what is it? So ODPI is actually a pretty recent addition to the Linux Foundation family of collaborative projects, but we've been pitching this idea to the industry for some time. And the idea is basically that if we, as an industry, want Hadoop, and by Hadoop I don't mean just HDFS and MapReduce, but Hadoop ecosystem, if we want that to basically get to the next level where the platform as a whole can rival some of the entrenched, database companies, like, I don't know, the one in Redwood Shores, we actually have to solve a very particular problem. We have to make sure that our customers get a fully integrated platform instead of just getting a bunch of individual projects. Now, again, you could say that these projects are actually governed by an existing entity, and that would be true. Most of that governance happens out of Apache Software Foundation, but that governance happens at the level of individual projects. And second of all, the ASF is super well optimized for allowing developers to collaborate, to which we wanted to add sort of our yin to the yang and allow for the essentially product managers to collaborate, to put it absolutely bluntly. So we wanted to basically provide an industry-wide forcing function for the Apache sort of project to go in a particular direction and achieve a certain set of objectives. And in fact, thinking about it, I think, we may actually sort of by accident stumbled into this dual, hybrid sort of governance model that could be an answer to some of the sort of shortcomings in the open source community that we've seen recently, because I think neither model taken to the extreme proved to be working. So you could see some of the Java-related sort of governance initiatives that basically decided to go and take care of both, sort of innovation and integration at the same time. You could see some of the other sort of platforms that went in the opposite extreme. I think you actually have to have a balance in that particular way. But again, looking at this slide right now, and that's actually what ODPI is today with our release 1.0 this week, this is not much of a platform. This is just Hadoop and Ambari, two of the key projects, but not much of a platform. And of course, we would like this ecosystem to be expanded, and in fact, that's, I think, will be one of the biggest sort of points of focus that we're going to have for the next release. I hope that we will be releasing on the predictable schedule, kind of like Ubuntu, every 6 months. So every 6 months you will see sort of more and more projects being added to the platform. And again, the keyword here is a platform. We're not just taking individual projects and sort of throwing them into the mix. We're actually taking a great deal of care figuring out what is it that customers really need out of the platform, as opposed to just getting these individual projects. So with ODPI, just to recap, oh, okay, I guess that slide didn't translate. So again, with ODPI, what we are releasing is essentially ODPI core. So that's the Ambari and Hadoop today, and again, that core will grow. We do not want to have a distribution that would sort of replace existing Hadoop distributions, but we do provide a reference implementation, a set of bits that, like I said, you can actually get and start playing today. And we're growing that ecosystem pretty significantly. So today, you can get an ODPI reference implementation. You can also get a specification that would sort of guide you through some of the more sort of gnarly points of how the platform needs to be integrated. It's a paper document. You can read through it, but you can also take a reference implementation and see how it needs to be implemented. You can also take a validation test suite and run it against your own distribution of Hadoop to make sure that whatever it is that you're giving to your customers will be interoperable between all the different players who are part of the ODPI initiative. So ODPI 1.0 is a runtime specification. Get it over there. Everything is governed in a very open and transparent way. We're not hiding anything. You can join our mailing list. You can join our GitHub. You can send us pull requests. You also get a set of bits. Get them over there. And finally, you can get the acceptance test, which is the same repo, just append acceptance test, and you will get the acceptance test. The members are plentiful. We've actually done a pretty good job of growing sort of the membership since 2015. proceed. We don't want to stop there. And in fact, if you don't see the logo of your company and you think that your company actually has anything to do with big data, talk to me, talk to Jim, because we definitely would like to see your logo on the slide, not just so we get to brag, but so you actually get to bring us your use cases, the use cases of your customers, and your agenda gets represented in how the big data ecosystem evolves. A couple of companies that I wanted to just call out, because, you know, that's interesting example. So one company is Linaro, that basically ended up sort of joining us to provide the same forcing function for Hadoop ecosystem to take care of running on ARM platform. Again, something that the open source development community has never really tackled. You know, partially because, you know, we just don't have ARM sort of build machines. I don't think we do at ISF. And partially because, you know, no single distribution provider of Hadoop was actually targeting ARM. So that's one, you know, that's pretty interesting. But the other one is actually a small company called Arena Data, you know, pretty recent addition to the project, which basically is a small Eastern European company. And the reason they joined ODPI, you know, when I was talking to them, was because they wanted to compete with some of the established Hadoop players. And the only reason they can do that, at least, you know, that's the way they explained to me, with which I actually agree, is to basically announce to their customers that they are essentially implementing the very same standards that the big guys are implementing as well. And being part of the ODPI is exactly sort of that kind of message that you're sending to your customers. We're trying to give you the platform that is actually the same platform between all of the different vendors, and all of the applications on that platform will be able to run very seamlessly. So how to get involved? As usual, you know, in the sort of open source world, the currency is your eyeballs, your time. So let me try to, you know, appeal. So you can get involved in the individual ASF projects. That would be just fine. Hang out on our mailing list, you know, use our stuff. So we have a continuous integration server that, you know, you can start using today. And finally, if you're one of the companies, you know, that may be missing from the previous slide, just talk to me, talk to Jim, and we would love to see you during the next presentation to be on that same slide.
Thank you. All right. So one of the attributes of all the Linux Foundation projects is we're super proud of what we're working on, and as a result, we're talking a little too long. We're going to push lunch back to 1 o'clock, so lunch is going to be from 1 to 2 today, so we give plenty of time for everybody to speak about their topics. Next, I think we are going to Kelly. So we're going to go, you're up next, Nico. What happens when Linux is too big for the Internet of Things? And Kelly Hammond from Intel is going to tell us about the Zephyr project, which is working on real-time operating systems that are solving problems in the IoT arena.
Thanks, Jim. Hi. So I'm here to talk about Zephyr. Zephyr is a real-time operating system. It is targeted for small memory footprint and MCU-class devices. So this is really taking the Internet of Things and trying to create an open-source community around these edge devices. So edge devices, things that have LEDs or LCD, wearables, etc. This is where we're trying to create something for this expanding ecosystem. The target memory footprint is about 8K to 512K. So this is very small. Actually, you can even, if you only use the nano kernel, you can actually get down to 2K. So targeted for very small devices. The initial members,
insight into how well they're doing, and then once we've identified the projects that are potentially at risk, providing them with the tools and the testing and the training, and also direct grant support to provide people to help work on orphan projects, and really provide a set of resources that are there at your disposal when you've got a project which is critical to the infrastructure of the Internet as a whole, and find ways to improve the security across the board in whatever way we can. So, the screen's died. What we've done so far, the CII was set up a couple of years ago. We got together 20 or so companies to donate some money. We've been running a census project. We've done a lot of analysis on projects that are out there, open source projects, to try and identify the ones that are at risk, find the ones that are orphaned, ones that have high backlogs of bugs, particularly security bugs, trying to find the ones that are the linchpins upon which other bits of infrastructure rest, and find the ones where we can do the most good most rapidly. We've been providing direct grant funding to a number of projects, particularly things like OpenSSL, OpenSSH, GNU-PG, and some of the network time projects. Providing direct grant funding allows those projects to hire engineers who can either do actual direct triage of bugs, fixing security issues, whittling down that backlog, doing more QA, and finding ways to directly engage to bring down those security problems. Also supporting both some existing projects and creating new projects for tooling, which will allow a project to be tested more thoroughly. So working with the fuzz testing group, working on putting false positive free static analysis into FRAMAC, working on reproducible builds so that when you download source code from the internet, you can take a look at it and work out what you're building. But if you download a binary, you want to be able to know that that's the binary that everybody else is getting, and be able to look at that sort of relationship of, we can think of those binaries as being a cache of the built state of the source code, but we don't want cache poisoning to be able to introduce security vulnerabilities. So CII, so far, we've been working on a number of fairly tactical projects, but also a few more strategic ones. Going forwards, we want to expand this out. We clearly want to continue to do all of those things we've been doing so far. We are also introducing our badging program, which will hopefully make it easier for consumers of open source projects to have some more insight into how well is this project doing. Hopefully that will both give the users some ability to choose projects more carefully, but also give some impetus to some projects to work towards reaching some of the goals that are necessary to achieve the badging levels. And also we want to engage with the community as a whole to put together a broader set of best practices. I'm always a little bit hesitant to use the phrase best practice, but a set of good practices for projects to know how to build threat models, how to assess code bases against those threat models, how to ensure that when code is submitted to these projects, those pull requests are properly checked to make sure that they don't introduce new vulnerabilities as they close off old ones. Putting together this list of practices, and we'll bring that into the badging process. We also are keen to ensure that as we go forwards, whatever we're doing is scalable and reproducible. We've been working with maybe a couple of dozen projects so far, but there are thousands more where there's either orphaned code or there's people producing great product, but they don't necessarily have security at their heart, and they need to understand those security nuances a bit better. So building tools, building testing frameworks, finding ways to expand out our training program to make sure that we can provide that leverage across a much larger set of projects. So how can you get involved? Well, firstly, if you have strong opinions on security, and many people do, then we're in the process of acquiring information for our best practices document, and we'd love your input. That's on GitHub. We're actually trying to bring together open source tools for testing, for static analysis, for dynamic analysis, for fuzz testing, and we're looking to build frameworks which will make it much easier for projects to automatically run all of these sorts of tools on their nightly builds on a regular basis to get that feedback and get that early response. If you've got a project that you are proud of, but you don't necessarily have a great deal of security expertise in your group, we'd love to talk to you about how can we help to potentially improve the security of your project. And of course, we're looking to expand the membership beyond just we've got 20 or so companies already involved in this who are mostly the community that you'd expect to see in this room, but we want to broaden up that membership beyond just the producers of code into the consumers of code. All of those ways to get involved are directly accessible from the coreinfrastructure.org website. So thank you very much.
All right, that concludes our lightning talks. You know, I want to mention one thing about CII, which I think is really interesting. It gets down to the importance of the individual in an organization like the Linux Foundation. You know, we have about 150 employees at the LF, and they really believe in what they do. They really are proud of the fact that they're making a difference. You know, you've seen it all today, this incredible difference. And in CII, we had another benefit from this sort of serendipity of projects coming together and sharing information. Emily Ratliff, I think sitting right over there, who is also a leader in the CII initiative, and Kate Stewart right here, both live in Austin, Texas, and they were talking one day. Kate was talking about, hey, we're using this thing called SPDX to share information about licenses across a supply chain. And Emily said, you know, we could use that same methodology to share information about security as well. And they're collaborating together spontaneously, these two wonderful people who just collided on this idea, and that's going to make all of us stronger, both from a license compliance perspective and a security perspective. And I think that's just such an incredible testimony to what we're all doing here. And so one other thing that I want to say is next year, we're going to change the format of this event. We're going to do a little less lightning talks. We just had to get it out of our system this year. And we're going to do a little more of a think tank format. I have commitments from the CEOs of open source focused companies, commitments from investors, people like Ping Li, who you're going to see this afternoon from Excel Ventures, commitments from open source program office managers, commitments from key developers, commitments from our members to come together next year, thought leaders in open source, and try and enable this kind of cross-pollination of ideas. Try and make more moments like, what Emily and Kate created by working together in Austin, Texas under the Linux Foundation. That's what you're going to see next year. We may do it in an even more storm-ridden, inaccessible place, but we may do it in somewhere that's a little bit easier to get to.
Clickers there, great. So, wow, Lee, that was amazing. A great talk. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to the Linux Foundation for hosting me to chat with you today about transformation. And I'll give you just, first of all, a little bit of background. So I've been with Pivotal since Pivotal spun off of EMC and VMware almost 3 years ago. I had started working with Cloud Foundry a little bit before, so I've actually been working with Cloud Foundry for close to 4 years. When the Pivotal spinoff happened and I joined Pivotal, I joined the Cloud Foundry team in a field-facing role. And I was working with customers and partners, helping them understand this new technology, this new platform. Back then we called it Platform as a Service. Now we tend to call it Cloud Platform or Cloud Native Platform. But this was kind of an emerging technology space, and I was helping them understand what this emerging technology was. And I'm a propeller head. I'm a technologist by background, and so sure, I spent a fair bit of time talking to them about the technology and how it worked and how they could leverage it and so on. But I spent just as much time talking to them about how they had to change the way that they were thinking about solving problems to be able to use the platform effectively. And also, conversely, how the existence of the platform allowed them to think about things